his son Isildur, Prince of Gondor, took up the shard and with its sharp edge struck from the Dark Lord's hand the finger bearing the One Ring, thus breaking at last his will and power. Then the One Ring should have been destroyed, but Isildur succumbed to its seductive power and refused to cast it away, houses are equally compact and rounded. Classic features of Hobbit architecture include circular doors and windows, curved walls and beams. Their owners set much store by pleasant furnishings and local craftsmanship, specialising particularly in finely turned and polished wood and in skillful cabinet making. Hobbit holes are devoted to comfort and hospitality, Gamgee has spent his whole life in and around the village of Hobbiton, although he has explored the neighbouring areas of the Shire with his friends on mushroom gathering expeditions and vegetable raiding forays. He has never travelled further afield, even though he has been entranced by Bilbo Baggins' exciting tales. Tending the garden at Bag End, Sam has been treated to many of Bilbo's adventures, stories about his journeys to foreign parts, where he encountered the more exotic folk of Middle-earth. Elves in particular have taken Sam's fancy. The barmaid at the Green Dragon Inn, Hobbiton's popular hostelry, has also captured Samwise fancy. Young Rosie Cotton is one of the prettiest hobbits in the Shire, but unfortunately Sam is too shy to make approaches to her, despite the encouragement and teasing of his friends. Instead, he is happy to sit comfortably with a good smoke of pipeweed and a flagon of the finest Shire ale, and listen to the chatter of others. Quiet, solid and dependable, Sam has always been the perfect companion for his friend and master, Frodo Baggins, to whom he is devoted. A hobbit of great heart and great appetite, Sam refuses to be left behind when Frodo first undertakes his quest. Although it is not clear at the outset what skills and qualities he can bring to the quest, for while he may be a practical and loyal lad, he is neither startlingly clever, nor obviously brave, nor yet skilled with a sword. However, adversity can make heroes of even the most unlikely folk. In Sam's case, it may forge stubbornness into iron determination and fierce loyalty into extraordinary courage. Meriadoc Brandybuck. Meriadoc Brandybuck, to give him his full and rarely used proper name, is the son of the Master of Brandybuck, and therefore comes from one of the Shire's most prominent and well-to-do families. But he is better known as Merry, an abbreviation that suits well his cheerful, sunny nature. A mischievous, lively and audacious lad, he has long been one of Frodo Baggins' closest friends, one fond of practical jokes, pranks and getting into scrapes, particularly with his cousin Peregrine Took, more widely is rarely the instigator in these mishaps, but tends to follow unquestioning Merry's lead. Naive, sweet-natured, and more than a little foolish, Pippin is probably the least prepared of all Frodo's companions for the danger and the darkness they are to meet on their quest. But hobbits are an adaptable, stout-hearted and determined folk, and while at the outset Pippin may prove to be rather more of a liability than an asset to the Fellowship, he will soon have the use of an elf sword and the need to use it in his own defence and that of his friends, and use it he will. Hobbits' feet. Hobbits rarely, if ever, wear shoes or boots, and as a result they have developed feet with thick leathery soles and fairy uppers to keep out the cold. Men. Men, they are weak. The noble blood of Númenor no longer flows in their veins. They heed nothing but their own petty desires. In the second age of Middle-earth, Elendil, High King of Gondor, and his son Isildur joined forces with the elves under the leadership of the legendary elven king Gil-galad to challenge Sauron and the forces of Shadow. The Battle of Dagorlad was the bloodiest of conflicts and saw the loss of both Gil-galad and Elendil, but finally the Dark Lord was driven on the way back to the slopes of Mount Doom, and there men and elves, fighting together for the last time, brought about his fall. With the broken blade of his father's great sword, Narsil, Isildur, now himself the High King of Men, cut from Sauron's hand the ruling ring, which severed him from his supernatural power, and thus the Second Age came to an end. Then should the Dark Lord have been laid low for all time, but men are by their very nature flawed. Instead of destroying the One Ring, Isildur desperately coveted it and decided to keep it for his own use, and for the good of his kingdom, declaring that it should henceforth be the heirloom of Gondor, and that all those of his bloodline should be bound to its fate. And so it is that 3,000 years later, in the third age of Middle-earth, his descendant Aragorn, son of Arathorn, last chief of the Dunedain, and heir to the Gondorian kingdom, is to find his own destiny, tied to the fate of the ring and the quest to destroy it. Isildur fell to an attack of orcs at the Gladden Fields, and the ring was lost into the waters of the Anduin. With his death, the race of men was left kingless, and since that time has dwindled and split into different factions and tribes. The Easterlings, the Haradrim, now support the Dark Lord, the Rohirrim, who dwell in the grasslands and mountains bordering Fangorn Forest, and the Gondorians, whose capital is the White City of Minas Tirith, closest of all kingdoms to the shadow of Mordor. Never since the fall of Isildur have the people of Gondor taken another king. Bree. So now I'm